When the spawn meets world, spawn meets world. When the spawn meets world.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets World.
Your Boy Meets World fancast. Welcome to episode 43. I'm Siege.
And I'm your boy, TC.
And TC and I are
In LA.
together.
Yes.
For good this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I finally moved to California, so we'll be able to do these podcasts in person.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked for it.
Yeah, by the way, that's the only reason why he did it. He did
Yes.
it specifically for you guys.
I moved here for the pod, guys.
He was like, the sound quality is just not up to par, and he's that much of a perfectionist.
And I'm that much of a Boy Meets World hardcore. Y'all know this.
So, on that note, what's new? What's up?
Well, I just drove across the country.
Yeah, y'all.
Yada, yada, yada. Living in LA now. Yeah, a lot of... You know what I will say this.
What?
In my cross-country road trip, there were a few gas stations that I had to stop in that I did not feel entirely comfortable in.
Oh, did you?
And it was just good to know that the South and the Bible Belt really lived up to its name and reputation in those instances.
Are you saying that certain places in this country are uncomfortable for people with melanin?
Yeah.
Just a few?
And just the amount of Confederate flags is just really a great indicator that you're in a bad place. But made it through the South alive. And
when we did our cross country road trip, it was literally 2016 of October, so right before the election, and the vote Trump signs, like that was our indication. It wouldn't be Confederate flags. You'd just be driving and you're like, oh, there's a lot more vote Trump signs than I was expecting.
yeah. And one other thing is that the vote Trump signs aren't there anymore. So you have to just guess, which is equally terrifying.
Oh, yeah, that's something. This country. So, yeah, let's see. Are you ready to get into this?
I'm ready to get
This
into
episode was dumb. Like, I mean, like it brought up a very interesting thing, and I'm going to talk about that for this and the next one, about how I do think Griff's character is interesting because of what he adds to the show. But
Okay, so I think the most significant part about this episode is the Griff, Frankie,
yes,
Joey
I completely
storyline.
agree. I actually feel like that's the A storyline, even
100%.
though it has less time.
Just because there's so much change. Like, Harley's gone. Like, the last time we saw Harley, it wasn't even the actor that plays Harley.
I know, that's what I wrote. Like, my first note was, so I guess Harley's gone.
Yeah, my first note, officially gone. And clearly these are network notes. Clearly It's like, no, we don't like that Harley, get another one. Oh, that guy can't be Harley. Let's just bring in a brand new person.
Why?
I honestly, you know what?
I would love to see the reason.
I can understand why now that Griff's there, because he is a coolness that's so much different.
It is. I will say his is way more grounded, even though his actions are very TV.
His actions are genie-like, is what I wrote down multiple times.
But at the exact same time, his place as an antagonist is way more grounded and real. And
then just who he is as an individual. Like, I believe that this is a kid that exists in this year.
Yes.
Unlike Harley, who clearly went through some kind of time machine situation.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think that's ready. Okay, so that leads us to, let's just get into it.
Yeah.
So tell me about it.
Tell me about it.
For season 2, episode 20, Pop Quiz.
Pop Quiz.
Keeping it very short, in an attempt to get better grades, Corey and Sean cheat on a test by studying. And John Adams High gets a new bad boy.
Yeah. First thoughts on this one, obviously, is that Harley is gone.
Yes.
And the other thing that kind of interests me throughout the episode was really Joey and Frankie's response to him leaving.
Dude, literally, it's so funny because now you can see my notes. Literally, Frankie and Joey and
Yeah.
their desire for a leader.
Their desire for a leader, but what I found interesting is that at no point did either one of them go, oh, now it's my time to step up. Now I can be a leader. There wasn't that Shannon
lackeys.
Doherty, Heather's moment.
Yeah,
Of like, oh, I can
Great
be,
reference.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can be the leader now. It was just like, what do we do without someone to follow?
I think it's very interesting because I think knowing how TV works, it's interesting that we spend so much time with these characters and so much time developing their storylines. Like, to be fair, they've got more storylines than Jason, which would make way more sense. Or Sean, or Topanga. Like, we are learning a lot about Joey and Frankie, and we get a lot of scenes with them. And don't get me wrong, I think they're comedic gold, and there's a lot to tap into there. But as showrunners, I'm like, what was the motivation behind it?
I 100% agree because, I don't know if it was this episode or the next one because we're recording back to back. I just kind of wrote down, I was at like, wow, like this show is really great at developing male best friend dynamics.
Yes.
Where you have Eric and Jason and Corey and Sean and Frankie and Joey, but the female characters never get a friend.
No.
And because of that, they don't get storylines.
Wow. Honestly, I just thought about that. Like, I thought about it. Topanga, Angela, Rachel.
Eventually.
Like, no, but what I'm saying, even them, their dynamics are based off of
the boys.
Girl plus boys. Like, it's the boys who are the center of even their storylines. Like, Rachel is literally in between Jack and Eric.
Yeah.
Angela, it's kind of like just peripheral on the Sean and Corey and Topanga.
And by the time we get there, which obviously we're putting quarters in jars here because we're jumping ahead, there is nothing reason why Angela and Topanga should be friends other than their boyfriends are
No, and that's what I was going to say. It's
Yeah.
like, to be honest, that makes sense. It's like they're only around each other because they're with these guys.
Yeah.
It's not like Angela was anyone other than Sean found a girlfriend and we need to figure out how that works.
But somehow Angela becomes Topanga's best friend, even though there's never an episode
so here's the thing.
that strengthens that the way we get with even Frankie and Joey.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. And it is upsetting in hindsight because it makes sense that Angela and Topanga would be so close because Corey and Sean are so close and they're around each other all the time. It's like, all right, well, if I'm gonna be with my boyfriend, I'm gonna have to get to know his best friend's girlfriend, and it's kind of like that friendship of convenience type thing where it's like would Topanga and Angela have ever been friends on their own?
And even analyzing where the show is now, like Amy never has a friend, Topanga never has a friend, and Morgan never has a friend. Which, by the way, they still keep throwing Morgan in every now and then.
They're like, she's still there. Well, here's the thing. I like that they didn't Judy Winslow her. Like, they could have very easily have just done that forever, and right now they're just kind of like, no, she's around.
Yeah, and I think this is the last season with this Morgan.
Yes.
So it kind of, you could tell she's getting older. There's just a difference
Yeah, they're
there.
trying to figure out what to do.
But clearly, what they're not doing is like, oh, let's give her a friend and strengthen her character and like build her out. That's not happening to any of the female characters. So that's kind of like at least first impression of this episode, and really the next episode too, was like, wow, so much attention giving to these characters that aren't the main cast, and building these relationships where the core cast is not being developed.
Exactly, and that you're right. We could have done some things with Amy or Al. I mean, like, it's weird because I know where we go in the future, and like what we hit on, but it's weird that right now they don't take this time to even develop. Like, we got a little bit of Eric and Jason, but like we could be fleshing out more of Sean. We could be fleshing out Topanga.
I feel like Frankie and Joey got just as much screen time this season as Topanga did.
Absolutely,
if not more.
Absolutely. I would say I think if we did minutes, they probably got more.
And I don't understand that. Because this is the same question we asked when the Harley and Harley's sister storyline came up. It's just like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But Griff is one of those characters that is let's just jump into the roll call.
Okay.
Yeah.
So roll call. The first person that I wanted to get in our new, he's only here for a moment, but Tommy.
I wrote down Tommy too.
Yeah, Tommy played by Eric Balfour. And the moment I saw him, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And again, a small role, almost inconsequential, but it's really cool to like see people in their early work.
For those who might see his face and not know him, Eric Balfour was in a bunch of 90s shows. He was also in like the
6
Mel
Feet
Gibson
Under.
movie, What Women Want. He was in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, the first one. He was in a few episodes of the OC and a bunch of episodes of 24 as well.
Yeah, again, I know him mostly as the boyfriend in 6 Feet Under.
I know him mostly as Jessica Biel's boyfriend in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, really? Yeah. I remember that remake.
Leatherface wears his face.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
Pretty cool.
You're like, two very different interpretations of that moment. Okay, and then the star of Roll Call, who I would think would make himself a star of the Roll Call, is Griff Hawkins, played by Adam Scott.
My first note was like, Griff Hawkins is such an amazing character name. I just thought the name Griff Hawkins is such a cool name. Adam Scott plays this role to perfection.
Yes, he does. I will say, he actually pulls it off, especially considering the different roles that we know him
Exactly.
for. It is very interesting to see him. And what's even crazier is it's believable.
Yeah.
Like his version of this arrogant bad boy
And
is one you're like, yeah, I follow.
He's attractive. Like he's
So, all right, my whole thing is like, because that's one of the things that they keep doing in this show is they're just like, everyone's like, who's this new guy?
even adults,
Yes.
which we'll get to later on.
Do not get. Oh, that's the other person who was on this roll call. Let me see if I can find it. Miss Gale.
Miss Gale.
I was like,
Phoebe's
excuse you,
assistant.
Gale. What is up with you?
Flirting with students in front of the
In
principal.
front of the
Like you
principal.
don't
I
even
said, "Do
care
you
about
want
your damn job.
Like, do you want your job?
Oh my
I
god.
hope she got suspended or something.
I think that of the time, like of 1994, 95, like this was a teen heartthrob look.
No, he is definitely a teen heartthrob. It's so funny you say that because last night I went to some bar and they were playing that new song by Charlie XCX.
The 90s one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 90s one. And I was like, we're not going to get into that. But anyway,
Sure.
the boy had the Justin Timberlake look.
Yeah,
And I was like, what's crazy is at the time, that was the sexiest you could look.
yeah.
And you're like, when you look at this, I was like, oh, that poor underfed child.
Well, even
But,
in
like-
this episode, when you see how long everyone's hair is, Joey, Frankie, Eric, everyone is having this long
Yeah.
Nirvana hair.
Yep.
And
The sexiest you could look at
exactly. And Griff comes in with just bangs galore.
this time. I like that. Bangs Galore is definitely a Griff type.
Also a great porn name.
Yeah. yeah, very much so. But yeah, Miss Gale, when she had her interaction with Griff, I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Griff's... I don't even know what to start with this episode because... Obviously, Corey and Sean have their... Let's get their shit out the way.
Yeah, all right, so I would say we can leave them for last, but let's get them out of the way. So in my mind, this episode...
How would you sum up their storyline?
I just did.
Yeah.
It was that they, in order to get better grades, they studied for the first time.
They learned what school is
Yeah.
my note.
That's exactly what... Because Sean is very much like...
Well, I'm lost. That's the whole idea. I stand in front of the class and talk. You learn. It's called education. So that's why this building exists.
He's like, and if students come here to learn... I lost it.
It's so funny, too, because we talked about sitcom dumb before,
Yeah.
and Sean couldn't be more sitcom dumb. What I love is Feeney continuously asking these kids to open a book,
Open
and
a book.
Sean is just like, you might as well be speaking Spanish.
You ever open a book? What? A book. Do you ever open a book? What?
What? What?
just like, yeah, well, so what I like with their storyline is a few things. One, Corey and, no, not Corey, Feeney and Mr. Turner, which we will get to.
I was
You
gonna say,
better know that
we've been leading up
comments.
to this moment.
I want to cherish that moment, so we will put it to the side. But Feeney and Turner, their interaction, again, we get a little bit more of what we got in the beginning of the season of, like, the older generation versus the new generation of teaching, and Feeney was like, open a book, do it, he's just like this authoritative figure, whereas Turner's like, hey, he comes up right after Feeney's just been yelling at him, he's like, did you hear a word he said? He was like, no, he just started yelling at us. It's like,
yeah,
they tuned him out, and Turner's just like, oh, okay, well, and he's negotiating with them, and he's talking to them, and even later on in the episode, we find out they placed a bet on it,
Yeah.
And a bet on whether or not, if they just gave the kids the answers and they understood.
But that's the thing, like, I'm still trying to figure out what Turner did so differently, because basically what he said was like, this is what the assignment is, study.
Yeah.
Like,
well, again, what he did was, and I think it's funny, he left his teacher plan book open. So, like, they felt that they were cheating the system.
I can't believe this. This is top secret information. Exactly when the pop quiz is and what's on it.
This is very valuable.
And in a way, it's kind of genius because Sean, you've talked about this all. Sean he's only engaged if he feels challenged.
Yeah, or if he feels like he's
getting away with something.
Yeah. This is kind of the question that popped up during the storyline is, one, how did they get to this grade? Because clearly they have no concept of studying or test taking, or Sean got a 12 on the test. Like, clearly so many people have failed them for them to get to this place.
Feeney, to be fair.
Which brings me to my next point. Like, if they don't know what the words open a book means, clearly Feeney is partly to blame for that.
Well, I think it's a comment on the fact that, Feeney knows they're intelligent. So, I mean, I would not be surprised if it's one of those things where, like, Feeney was passing them or, like, giving them, because he knows that they know the material. He knows that they're engaged. They're just not performing the way that they're supposed to. Oh, I'm not defending this particular test.
Yeah.
I'm talking about their educational journey.
Sure.
It's very often with Corey and Sean, and I look at it again both realistically and as a TV show, but it would make sense that these two students get featured because they are the ones who are constantly challenging the teachers to teach me in a different way. And I kind of feel like that's what this show is about. It's like, teach me in a non-traditional way because I'm not going to get the lesson just on paper.
But, and while I agree with that, they make them so dumb and so inept at basic education principles.
Basic functions.
Yeah, it's just like, again, a questioning, how did they get this far? And I'm sure you're right. I'm sure there was a lot of, like, people understanding that there was maybe through projects or through other things that were able to make up the grade.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even at the end, Sean's like, he gets a 94 and he's like, this test alone is enough to get me into a good trade school.
Which again, it's the 90s.
Yeah.
We're shitting on trade schools, which we are not. I think that there's nothing wrong with going to a trade school. In fact,
it's important.
I'm going to say it's not only important, it's actually smarter if that's like
a smarter investment.
Where your skill
is.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I did think that was a little classist dig.
Sean and Corey do a thing where they decide to not read the book of Mice and Men. They decide to rent the movie and copy the stuff off the back, which includes great acting, well directed, which is a goof later in the episode. But my question is, have you ever rented a movie or Spark Notes?
I'm going to say, rented a movie. I did it once. Actually, it's so funny. I did it just one time, and that was with the Harry Potter book. Because remember when we were in school, they had like that reading program where you would like take a quiz on having read the book, and it would add points to it, and you could get like pizza or whatever. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was some kind of like reading rewards program. Well, the certain books had higher point values, and I think Harry Potter had just come out, and I guess it wasn't the movie, but I had done something, or like Spark Notes or something like that, and I just tried to bullshit my way through it, and my teacher was like, "Nah, you can't." Like,
I have for sure done this, and I can't quite remember what it was for. I think it might have been, what's the one about the kids that go off on an island?
Oh, literally, it's right. Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies,
It's
which
literally right
I
there.
did end up reading eventually, but
Oh,
I
it's
think
fantastic.
I think the first time it was assigned to me, because I got assigned to it multiple times.
Yeah.
I rented the movie, which I think was some old black and white movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that whole concept of watching the movie, because I actually learn better through video. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a learning
You're a
thing.
visual learner,
I'm
probably.
a visual learner. I can watch a documentary and remember everything about it, whereas if I read a book, sometimes I just won't stick with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I relate to that aspect, but they didn't even watch the movie. They just copied the back of the box. They were like, we couldn't give this an hour and a half of our life.
I forgot, like, they're in Corey's room, and there's something where it's like, we could study, and like, I think like they have like 3 seconds of like trying, and they're like, well, let's figure out a way to get around this.
Yeah, he was like, if I make this shot, we're gonna study. Did you purposely miss Corey? Not even close.
So it's very interesting, and so that leads us to a very, very special moment.
Oh yeah.
Because so as a setup for those who haven't watched it yet, Mr. Turner is like haggling with them to get their papers in.
Yes.
And he's like, I haven't received it yet. And they're like, well, we didn't know about it. And he's like, this assignment has been here. And they're like, we'll give it to you on Tuesday. I'm grading them on Sunday.
Yeah.
And when Sean responds, so Tuesday. Like Tuesday seems legit, right?
So good.
And he's like, I'll tell you what, if you can get it to me at my home by Sunday before I grade them, we'll be fine. Which leads us to the boys coming to visit.
Turned on by Turner. Ooh.
Yeah, and it was everything that I wanted it to be.
For the whole season, I've been promising you that this
You
moment
did.
would come.
And you did not disappoint. I was so happy. You turned that corner, and I was like, this was for me.
So clearly the turned on by Turner moment is when the boys get to Turner's house, his apartment. Which, can I sidetrack for one moment?
Yeah, go for
This
it.
is the first time we're seeing Turner's apartment.
Which is, I was going to bring it up. It is Eric and
Yes.
it's clear that it's their apartment
The
later.
apartment
Eric and
plays a big role
John-
next season
yeah.
with Jonathan still there, but later on it turns into the boys' college apartment.
and it looks like it.
Yeah,
I immediately
100%.
looked at everything. I was like, this is the same
And
set.
I think the next time we go back to his place, it's a little bit more developed, and it's
Okay.
a little bit more has a little bit more depth. and
Yeah.
things like that.
Once they've decided that it's going to be a spot.
Because I believe next season his black roommate.
Oh, yeah.
Eli comes over.
Eli.
And so we spend a lot more time there. Sean's living there at that point, so there's a lot of time we spent at that apartment. So it was just really cool to be introduced to that set for the first time. But of course, it's hard to pay attention to that
When Mr. Turner turns that corner in a pristine white wife beater.
Yep.
Like fresh out the pack wife beater.
Did he just do push-ups?
I mean, I don't know what, but the arms were flexing.
He's
He
a
came
buff
in,
dude.
And he's just like those jeans. Again, it's like it's not just the jeans have always worked, but now the jeans
To the
in that
tank. Yeah.
It was a magical moment.
Yeah. His hair seemed to flow in a way
It did,
too.
didn't
Yeah.
it? It's just like, oh, he is feeling himself in this.
Sure.
I don't know what that prep was like, but he was really excited.
Well, it's funny because he tells the boys, like, hey, help yourself to a drink. I actually need to get ready for a date.
Exactly.
Which I thought was really funny because, of course, he's getting ready for a date.
Yeah,
But also, the boys realize he's going out with Miss Tompkins.
he was like,
And they're like, yo, Turner and Miss Tompkins, they're going to go out to the movie, maybe grab some dinner, and
and
then
after, and they're like,
yeah.
yeah.
Turner's going to be raw dogging Miss Tompkins. And it's just interesting that as students, they were like thinking of their teachers.
Yeah, that's
getting
what I thought. It was like
on.
kind of weird. And well, to be fair, they showed up a day early. That's
Yeah.
like the whole premise is like they showed up a day earlier than they were supposed to, and Turner's getting ready for this date, and so that's why like
Sure,
they
sure.
quote unquote caught him off guard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very, very interesting that this is what.
It's also interesting too that Turner's like later on in the episode, he's like, "You mean the teaching guide that I left perfectly out for
Yeah.
you guys?" But they came on the day he wasn't expecting them.
Well, I'll agree with that, but I also feel like he does leave them alone in his apartment for an abnormally long amount of time. For when you would leave Corey and Sean alone in your apartment, you know what I mean? But the entire time I was like, this does not seem kosher. Like, you have two teenage boys in their teacher's apartment.
I didn't feel comfortable with it, honestly.
I didn't. I was
and
like,
maybe we're weird.
No, I don't think that we are weird. I think that now and socially, it's just not.
Have you ever been to a teacher's house?
Not that I can think of.
I've been to it. Well, my friend in high school, Jay, his parents, his parents were teachers, so that kind of gave me an entrance. But yeah, there were a few times that I went to a teacher's house and it was very weird.
Yeah, but why? Why did you go to a teacher's house?
Me and my friend Reed were paid to paint a teacher's house.
Okay.
And so we painted the outside, and then
and
we were invited inside for dinner afterwards. But
but that's weird.
It was weird. I have to say.
Weird.
And
I'm sorry, that's
meeting
a
the
weird
kids.
thing.
And, yeah, it was very weird.
I mean, like, here's the thing. Even when you get to a certain age, like college professors, I've like hung out with after class or whatever like that. And even I think that that's like pushing it. But, like,
what I think is really pushing it, and I find out that a ton of teachers do this now, is that they text their students. And I feel so weird and uncomfortable.
So I actually was just the other day, while I was getting everything together, I was watching Glee, and, like, they mentioned that. Like, she's like, when a child gets a good grade on a test, I tweet them in that moment, and, like, they feel special. And I was like, all right, that kind of makes sense. But I just, like, you're right. I don't know. I feel that, like, if the parents are aware that the teacher is texting the kid or whatever, that's a little bit different. Like, if, you know, like, at orientation or first day of school, the teacher's like, hey, I tend to text the kids to remind them, blah, blah, blah. That's one thing. But in general, it just feels weird. My sister's a teacher, and I know, like, very often she'll, like, hand her phone over to the kids, or, like, the kids will, like, record videos on Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, and
like,
maybe the change in technology has changed those rules a little bit. I wouldn't want to have communication with students that couldn't be public.
Yes, no, that's my whole thing. For me, looking at it, I was like, this is not good optics for Turner. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think anything ill of Turner, but it's just not good optics. Also, he's shirtless. It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
it wasn't even, he was like, let me put a shirt on for these
no.
In fact, he put the shirt on, and then later on,
took it off. Which I have to admit, he was like, what shirt? And then, because it's them, they were like, we like this one. Okay, well, just...
In all fairness, they're dressed like their, like, clothes are, like, tattered.
It's a little bit.
But yeah, that was... I turned on my Turner moment.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
But again, so that's interesting to kind of pivot. We do this whole thing. We had the bet with Feeney, which I thought was really funny. And again, we get this whole dynamic of the two of them, the old way versus the new way. But what that does is, in the beginning of the series, we had Feeney set up with an antagonist, which is Mr. Turner.
Sure. And
they were like going at this way. But now they're kind of buddy-buddy. They have this relationship. It's fun. Enter a new antagonist for Feeney, which is Griff. And Griff comes, and he's there to challenge Feeney in a way we have not seen Feeney challenged in quite some time.
Well, that's partly because Griff is a character that I cannot wrap my head around.
Explain
because he is either rich or famous or magic. And I can't figure out which of the three he is.
I would say rich so far. It seems rich. And rich, honestly, would lean into, like, his contacts and, like, the ability to do all this other stuff. I feel like it's kind of even. Like, I kind of was watching this and did a backstory of my own, which is that Griff is from this prominent family who he's been expelled from all of the private schools, and he's being forced to go to this public school, and he's just kind of asserting his power
Sure.
in that whole thing. Because you're right, outside of anything like that, it doesn't make sense. But the fact that he's transferring, the fact that he has all this access and he has people willing to do these things and move and shake for him, and he seems like just above it all, that is definitely a privileged arrogance.
Oh, I mean, there's so much privilege, but because Adam Scott is so, like, he plays the role so well, I never am just like, ugh, privilege. Like, I'm never just scoffed at it. I'm just like, this guy is so cool, and I can't figure out why. Like, he seems like, first of all, I want to say, this is not our first time seeing Griff.
No, it's not. I told you earlier. And it's the continuality. It makes sense.
It still makes sense.
He goes to a different school.
And the episode where the boys try to start a band, he is in the very opening scene at Chubby's as being one of the band members, that the boys end up holding the guitars for, the cases for.
Everything makes sense.
And everything kind of developed from there. So yeah, it still makes sense, I guess. I mean, we don't see him playing an instrument, and that never comes back, but I guess it doesn't have to.
Nope.
Frankie and Joey are mourning the loss of Harley.
Yeah, because Harley's at a reform school.
It's a letter from Harley, kinda.
It's okay, Joey.
How's Harley doing in his new reform school?
It's called juvenile boot camp. He loves it, thank you very much.
He never wants to come home. Doesn't say it here, but I think he's got a new gang.
Which he says he loves it. Which, does Harley really love it?
I think he does. I think he. Remember, we've talked about this a lot. Harley seemed to be someone who had good intentions and all this other stuff. He was just kind of doing this out of necessity. And I feel that if, for whatever reason, he was sent to a reform school, I actually feel that he would enjoy it. He would enjoy the not having to carry his family's burden.
I feel like possibly that's the case. I feel like it would be extremely hard for him realistically to be away from his sister, to be away from these guys that he's developed this leadership with. I think that he's telling them that he likes it, but he's actually like...
Oh, thank you for reminding me. So, another fan theory that kind of fits into our Frankie fan theory. I think Harley and Joey and Frankie were up to some things.
Really?
Well, the way that they
The codependency.
is what I mean. Codependency, kind of, but what really sealed it to me is when Eric, they're looking for a new leader and they see Eric take advantage of Corey, and so they're like, oh, we found someone who we can look up to, and when Eric says something, he is yelling at Joey or something.
Oh, and Joey's like, smack me.
He's like, smack me. Say it again, but smack me.
Smack me.
And I was like, again.
I wrote down that note, and I just put eyes open emoji.
Exactly.
Like, I didn't know what to express.
See, for me, I was like, okay, so we had a little sub-dom thing going on, and I'm not, teenage boys spend a lot of time together. One of them really tends to get excited with the physical abuse as well as,
Did Harley ever... I never got that vibe that he would smack Joey around.
I know. That's why I'm like, I don't think this was
This wasn't a Harley thing. This is a Joey thing.
Well, what I'm saying is, I don't think that Harley would just slap them around for no reason. I think that if he was slapping them around, it's because that's what they like to do in their extracurricular activities.
So, just because we kind of skipped over a little bit of it, Frankie and Joey decide that their new leader should be Eric after they see Eric scam Corey out of tickets to a water park.
Yeah.
So he could take repeated student that wasn't on the roll call, Jasmine Fontana, who was also on the radio episode.
I know, she wasn't new. I don't include...
You're right.
Roll call is for new people.
You're right. Well, Jasmine Fontana makes another appearance as Eric's future date to the water park, as he has successfully invited her and conned Corey out of his water park ticket by basically saying, Corey, hey, mom and dad are going to find out about you renting a movie for
Exactly.
your book
It's
report.
so funny because it's so innocent and pure.
So sibling.
Yeah, and but I'm just talking about like the crime that Corey committed is like so a Corey crime.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is really genius about it, is that Eric knows that like it's nothing in the really big scheme, but it's gonna make Corey feel bad.
Well, also, what's really interesting is that Frankie and Joey see this, they immediately get bedazzled by it. And they come to school dressed as
LL
Eric,
Bean,
which is just so funny.
It's really cute.
Seeing Joey and Frankie in their preppy clothes with the sweaters draped over their shoulders, it's a great, hilarious moment visually.
It really is. And so actually it's really funny. I'm reading right now this whole book called No Logo that's about the rise of fashion in the 90s and like how it invaded everything. And it's really funny to see something so like the LL Bean that is in fact like kind of derived from the late 80s but like become into fashion as like a mass-produced thing in the 90s.
Well, also, I guess I never thought to stylize Eric as preppy before until this moment, because they all kind of have this kind of like knockoff grunge attire anyway, just like oversized flannel everyone's wearing anyway. I never thought of him as specifically preppy until this episode.
Well, so it's actually really funny because Eric is preppy, and Eric is in line with the more LL Bean, Tommy Hilfiger type look, where it is Corey and Sean that are more the grungy with it. Yeah. Because like think about Eric's outfits and even Jason's outfits compared to Corey and Sean, which is like this very oversized, big ska band type look.
Grunge adjacent. I would say Walmart grunge.
Yeah, it's the what is that? In the movie Clueless when they go to that party.
Yes.
It's exactly
100%. This episode just had some really interesting moments. So we learned that Griff is a transfer.
Yep. I have to say I like his intro because this is what I'm talking about. He challenged Feeney. Him, when Feeney's like, very little gets by me, and he's talking to this person who he thinks is Griff, and then Griff just comes right in, and he's like, thanks for holding my seat, kid, and like the kid just like gets up and leaves.
It's sorry about that, I'm not a morning person.
Exactly. So, he said, I wanted to be fresh. He comes in with this smugness. First of all, they set his character right off the bat. Because you have Feeney saying that very little, you'll see you'll see Mr. Hawkins that nothing gets by me. Yeah. And right off the bat, Griff comes in and he's like almost on cue, like he was waiting for it. He comes in and he's like, all right, kid, thanks. And get up and
well, it's also apparent to me that Griff had spent quite a few minutes outside of Feeney's office chatting it up with his assistant. Yes. Who apparently does
not want her job, that's for sure.
That was just... There's future moments of Griff and adults that I have questions about, but we'll wait till the next episode. But yeah, it's not surprising at all that Joey and Frankie kind of aspire to be Griff's new lackeys.
Not at all. It makes a lot of sense, especially when you see his interaction with Tommy. Because, all right, so that's what I want to bring up. So that brings Tommy into the story. Because when Tommy shows up, first of all, I'm like, this is the guy who I think is more attractive. But whatever. Sure. And then he's like, yo, Loretta told me about you. And he's like, oh, well, then yeah.
You can believe everything she says.
You believe everything she says. And I was like, oh, you know what? That's a smoothness that you just can't. And then what? Tommy, like, tries to do something.
He basically is like, let's go outside.
You want to step outside and talk about this?
Actually, we'd love to step outside and talk. We just love to talk, Frankie and me. We're a couple of regular chatterboxes.
Maybe you've seen our show, Meet the Fist.
Hey, look. This is between me and him.
No. We're between you and him.
Yeah, which is, I mean, again, as far as they saw an opportunity, they went for it. And I was like, good on you. take an initiative. But
And I think what Joey and Frankie really like, because I honestly don't think the ladies' man aspect of it interests them very much. Harley
No,
was
they
never
don't.
much of a
They
ladies'
don't.
man. What they like is this guy who seems to have the power and ability to get
Yes.
away with things.
yes.
And I think that's what attracted them to Harley, who had that through crime.
Yeah.
But here they find the same attribute through Griff, through what I imagine to be wealth.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I imagine it's wealth. But what's interesting to me about that, or what I wanted to bring up, is this whole thing of Loretta or whoever it is. I was like really upset with the whole, like, oh yeah, she told me, like there was like this ownership of Loretta that I didn't really like, and there's like this bit where
Later on he's like,
well, have her back, and I was like, excuse you,
yeah, have her back by 11.
Yeah, exactly. It was like it was
Sure.
really, really upsetting. I just wanted to acknowledge that because I was like, this is, again, some 90s bullshit.
Yeah.
But it was, in fact, it was a fun way of showing Griff being this suave character.
And the fact that he just kind of came to the conclusion that, you know what, I can see, I get into enough of these situations,
That was another
not
thing.
even just with ladies, just in causing trouble, that it would be nice to have people around who would take the fall or who would deal with all the messy stuff. So I think it, and you know what, I have to say, when Griff is there, I don't miss Harley.
Oh, I didn't. I'm not going to say, I will say that only Harley can play Harley.
Yeah.
And I feel that what we did last episode, where there was like some new guy came in, you're like, no, this is not Harley, fuck off.
Yeah, yeah.
But with Griff comes in, you don't miss Harley because this is a different type of bad boy, and one that makes more sense. One that you could see, honestly, I could see Sean being more persuaded by this leader than the faux Harley we got.
What's interesting, too, is that Griff comes in, he's here in this episode, he's here in the next episode. I don't even think he makes it to next season. So, like, again, investing in these characters, like, building a brand new character up, giving him an arc.
Yeah.
Just for him to disappear. And I know there is actually a moment coming up where Griff and Harley kind of face off.
Yeah, I know.
And seeing them side by side, you really understand how dated Harley was in his overall design.
I mean, we knew this from the moment Harley showed up. My first question was, where are we?
Yeah. And so I think after so many studio notes and so many just like rewrites of this is what we should get, eventually they just like, you know what, let's just get rid of Harley and Griff, because next season you don't see either of them.
And I think we have enough going on.
Yeah.
And we have enough. We just have enough to deal with each of the characters. And I think the choice to flesh out Topanga a little bit more helps with that.
Well, also, I think what happens is after the Griff storyline fades off, that's when they really start deep diving into Sean's family.
Yeah.
And so I think that gave way more fruit on that tree than anything that Griff, because he's a core member of the cast. Corey,
because what Corey's actually, I think right now, even, not this episode, it's next episode, but he says something, he's like, oh, I'm trying to find I haven't left an identity. I was like, again, we've done this like 3 times this season.
Yeah.
But they're just kind of like, that's their mission this season. It's just like, boy, trying to find himself. And you're like, or try to create a name for himself. And you're like, we get it.
Sure.
But when you're watching next season, we're dealing with actual teenage issues.
Yeah, for sure.
And as you said, we have a deeper dive into Sean, a deeper dive into Topanga. We get more meat to chew on with the characters that we already know, that we don't need these side characters.
And I think the producers eventually learn that too, because, I mean, I will know, like, because we're almost done with the season. So by the time we get to the next one, we'll be able to see the shift that happens, because, I mean, Topanga gets a friend in Brittany Murphy's character that comes aboard, R.I.P. Sean has his dynamic living with Turner and learning more about Chet Hunter, which I fucking love Chet Hunter.
Chet is amazing. Chet is
as
one of
a
those
character
people, yeah.
on this show in general. I have never met such a lovable deadbeat dad, and I just can't wait until he gets into the show. So
Yes.
there's just so much more to explore
Yeah.
there, and I'm so glad that they found that and they got all this bullshit out of the way. Because I think in retrospect, these first 2 seasons we're gonna be like, wow, they were really figuring shit out.
Yeah.
But by the time we get to 3, 4, and 5, it's like, all right, they got it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really interesting or important because we've talked about this a lot. A lot of the shows in the 90s, they're allowed that leg room
Yeah.
to figure
Totally.
themselves out. And we just, I look at this like very much like our podcast, which is like season 1 and season 2, we don't really know what we're doing. We got to figure it out.
Sure.
But like once we get the things that work, we're like, all right, so I know what I want to do and I know how I want to make this better. And you just don't get that kind of time now. It's like you have to be a hit right out of the park very often. And if you're not, then the whole thing crumbles. Whereas, no, there's good stuff here. You just need to fine tune it. You need to get rid of like this whole thing and like that. And then once you do it, you have a really great series.
Sure. And I think just, gosh, they got so, and I don't know how they tested these actors, but Ben and Ryder specifically can do anything.
Yeah,
they can do slapstick humor. They
Yep.
can do drama.
Yep.
They can do just basically anything the show needs from them. They can pull off so well, and they can pull off so well. And I'm so glad that, especially Ryder, it was just casted because
Yeah.
I don't know that they expected that much of him when they first got him
No,
on the
they
show.
did not.
But he was able to really take it to another level.
I mean, if we want to get back into it, Eric, same way.
Yeah.
Eric was someone where we've seen them kind of pivot and be like, oh, he can do this. He can do comedy. He's pretty funny. And I'm sure that when he auditioned, you know, in the beginning, it was just like, oh, funny older brother. That's like what we'll have with him. But as time has gone on, they've really seen their strength. And I think it's great.
And I mean, we're at the end of season 2 now. It's a completely different show from season 1.
Oh, it's
unrecognizable in a way.
It's unrecognizable, but also in the later season, as we keep watching, I'm just looking at where we were in the beginning. And again, I told you, like, the beginning of this season, Turner and Feeney had a much more
Combative,
head-to-head dynamic that they were setting up. And now it's just kind of like, no, they're buddy. They're in this together. Their goal is to teach these kids.
I think that over the season, Jonathan really has earned Feeney's respect in a lot of ways. And I think that's,
I agree.
Yeah.
I
That
agree.
really has helped build a friendship.
Not only that, but usually in the beginning, we kind of saw Turner be the one who was taught that Feeney knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this episode in particular, it goes to show that, no, Jonathan knows what he's talking about.
Sure.
Because, like, when we did the strike episode, that whole thing was, like, Turner being like, you let them too loose. Or even the video episode, it's like, you had a good idea, but when they're unsupervised, things get out
The
of control.
pirate radio, another example.
Exactly. All of those things are like Turner being taught that he's being too trusting with these kids. But when it comes back to learning, this was a win in Turner's corner. And I think that's great. All right. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, there was just one or two other points that I wanted to make. When the boys get to Turner's house, there's toy cars everywhere. Does he have a son?
That actually, again, I would love. We've talked about this numerous times. I would love a Mr. Turner spinoff. We're not gonna get it now, but like it would have been so good to get.
Morgan has a pointless sandwich storyline that we could
that was
go
stupid.
right by. At one point, Eric's like, when I see these water park tickets, I see someone in a wet bikini. Alan says that's entirely up to Corey.
I love that. But here's the thing. I like that because that's another one of those parenting moments where Alan, like, very was like, you know what? Doesn't matter to me. You're taking your brother. You know? And it's like, and he said it in even after he delivers the line, it's like this father arrogance of, like, being like cool, you're taking your brother.
Exactly.
And he's so proud of himself, and I was really proud in that moment.
When the boys are about to take their tests, Corey and Sean both have a bouquet of number 2 pencils that they hand out. Was there ever a number 1 pencil, is my question.
So, I actually, I did a research on this. This is a completely nerdy moment. But there are grades. And the thing is, with a number 1 pencil, it's so light.
So it's the thickness of the lead.
It's
Okay.
so light that, or I think it's like either the thickness of the lead or like the amount of graphite in it. I can't remember which one. But the thing about a number 2 pencil is it is in fact the perfect amount of darkness to where Scantrons can read it.
Yeah.
It's not too dark, but it's also light enough to where, however those test grading things work, it can shine through it and work. Whereas if it's too light, you just can't see.
All right.
And that's what a number 1 does.
The only other note that I had was that there's a scene when the boys are at Turner's apartment and they're just checking out Turner's CDs from his giant CD rack, and I just got so nostalgic because I was like, bro, do you remember fucking CDs? Do you remember how like proud you were of your collection and how it just defined you?
Book of CDs.
Yeah, it just, I remember it being such a thing of like when people come to your room for the first time, hey, take a look at my CDs, or everyone went to check out your CDs because they would judge you based on what CDs you
Everyone had that CD rack.
Yeah.
That tower where it's
tower
just
of
like,
CDs, yeah. And they made these towers in all these elaborate ways and everything, and I was just like, when I in the 90s, there was nothing cooler than having a huge CD collection.
Huge CD rack. And then you did the Columbia House thing where you could get like 10 CDs for a penny.
Dude, I would buy singles. Like, I would, whatever I could afford. I would go to that
FYE?
Yeah. Yep. Virgin Megastore, Sam Goody, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'd pay like $25 for a CD.
That is insane.
I paid $14 for Spotify, and it comes with Hulu.
That's funny. It's really insane when you think about like how far we've come with music.
Yeah.
Because you're right. That entire CD rack fits on your phone. And with more songs.
With more songs and less money.
Way less. And it's crazy.
So I just, that just really was a nostalgic moment just to see that.
Yeah, no, it is. And then like the fish tank. Again, all of it. It's very, very 90s apartment. And I really liked it. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Do you have a Feeney taught me?
I think the Feeney taught me of this lesson, of this episode, was more Jonathan's doing, which is simply that, like, you can get good grades whenever you want, just pay attention.
Yeah.
And I know that seems dumb, but that's kind of what I got away with.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I'll give you that because to me, there's not much else.
Yeah.
Like, this was like a very light episode in terms of like lesson or anything like that. And I don't think the only thing you were supposed to take away from it was like, if you put in effort, it's really easy.
Yeah.
Or like notice what's around you. Because like the same thing where he's like, you can look at my lesson plan anytime you want to. They're like, what? He's like, yeah, I put it like on the board.
I write it in big letters. Just pay attention.
Exactly. And they're like, mind blown. Yeah. So yeah, that's like the really thing. What grade are you giving this?
C+.
Yeah, you know, I was gonna just do it.
It's a real C. Again, even with the entrance of Griff, he just doesn't make a big enough impact on the series as a whole for his appearance to bring this up a grade.
Most people forget that he was
ever on. Yeah.
Which is, I will say, considering that it's only really this season that we
have 3 episodes, honestly.
Well, what I'm saying is it's only this season that we really have Harley.
Oh, yeah.
That shows how...
Well, last season we only had Minkus for a season. So
and it's really interesting that this show was able to create characters like Harley, like Minkus, that were so iconic that a series that went on for 7 seasons can have one character for one season and we all remember that person.
Yeah.
So I think that's very interesting.
I feel like, and I could be wrong, I feel like when I'm talking to the person who vaguely watched the show in the 90s, didn't really keep up with it, maybe watched some of the Disney reruns, that they're way more likely to remember Harley or Minkus than even Rachel.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Like
because she was on it for at least 2 seasons,
Yeah.
but a central part of the cast
Yeah.
in every episode. But for whatever reason, Minkus and Harley are one of those characters that just keep.
They were outsiders enough or outliners enough to where it made sense. Whereas Rachel does kind of fit into that 2 guys, a girl in a pizza shop.
Yeah,
Like
it was a generic
programming.
character.
Like, it just it very, very much.
And
like,
I think a lot of that has to do with giving credit to these actors who were able to take their little bitty roles and make like amazing performances
I'm not
out
gonna
of them.
disagree with you on that. Yeah. So I was gonna give it a C, and I'm gonna give it a C. But I like your C plus.
Yeah.
For me, you know me. For it to be a C plus, I need like a Jason
So
Joe
Turner didn't even.
So here's the thing. I was just about to say the only thing that like would save this would be the turned on by Turner moment, and even then, I just didn't get enough of it. Here's the thing: if like the episode was Turner, or if he had like taken off the wife beater, then I would be forced.
If he had taken off that wife beater in front of those kids, I would have turned off the episode feeling so uncomfortable, feeling like I don't know that I should have seen what I just saw.
And what's actually, it's interesting because I just thought about it. That had to be a TV note. Because nowadays, Turner would have been shirtless when the kids came over.
Or they would have found that scene of him throwing on a shirt on his way to answer the
Yeah.
door, something.
That's what I'm saying. We would have seen Turner without the tank top. Nowadays.
You know what? I really don't. Well, nowadays, yeah. I was like, I feel like the tank was a perfect amount.
No, I think the tank was perfect.
Yeah.
I'm not critiquing it. I just thought about the fact that like when I watch shows that are made now, Turner would have been he would have just been shirtless.
Yeah.
He would have not have been wearing an undershirt the way that he is in this. Which again, in the 90s, everyone was wearing undershirts, so that also makes sense from a time perspective. But yeah, if this was made modernly, he would have just been shirtless. Because I can't tell you how many shows I watch now where you're like, why is this person shirtless?
Sure, yeah,
You're like, there's no reason for this dude to be
Not at all.
shirtless. And I like a shirtless dude, but it's just like, but why is he
Yeah.
shirtless? Homework, yeah. What do you
What's
have?
your homework?
So, you're going to laugh at this. For the very first time, I saw New Jack City.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. New Jack City.
I
we're
saw
in
New
this.
Jack City for the first time, and let me tell you, I had such a good time. This movie
This movie. I
is
can't believe,
ahead of its time in so many ways.
bro. I can't believe you. You're 30.
Yeah, I'm 30 and I've never seen New Jack City. And don't get me wrong, I get all the references.
Yeah.
I know a New Jack City scene, but I just don't. I've never seen the movie.
Yeah.
And so last weekend, I watched it, and I was, like, blown away by the storyline, by the concept. The acting's good.
Nino
It's like
Brown, baby.
it is a good, what's his
Wesley
name?
Snipes.
Pookie.
Chris
Pookie.
Rock in that movie is phenomenal. His
He is
performance
so fucking good.
is one of the greatest acting performances I've seen of Chris Rock's career.
Pookie is a great character, and here's the thing. I was like, I know that New Jack City is like known in the circles as like a really good
Yeah.
movie, and like I think even some, I'll say like elite movie list or whatever will refer to it, but this is an underrated movie. I watched this movie and I was like, there is no reason this movie should not have been nominated because it is. Don't get me wrong, there are moments
I
that
mean,
are cheesy, but like
you know 100%.
I do know why, but what I'm saying is, even for like it's cheesy and it has all these moments and everything. I was like, yeah, but that's '90s cinema. Like it didn't hold up well, but this movie is phenomenal in what it covers.
And
It's
Wesley
phenomenal.
Snipes is-
Wesley Snipes does it. Like the controversy, the different dynamics, why people do what they do, the motivations.
The whole learning about the crack system too, like
Yes.
the crack houses and how he did it, and just it's so brilliantly
It's
done.
a
Yeah.
really well done movie, and I was. Just
And I believe
blown
this is
away.
on HBO now.
Yeah, it is on
yeah.
HBO.
Okay,
I
so
watched it on
guys, if you have
Go.
HBO Go, HBO Now, definitely check out New Jack City. 'Cause,
New
yeah,
Jack City.
and that soundtrack too, man.
Yo, it opens up with Queen Latifah. I was like, what?
Dude, that movie's great. Yeah,
It's
I
a
might have to go
great-
home and watch New Jack City,
Watch
man.
New Jack City.
That's
yeah.
it's been a minute.
That's my homework.
All right, yeah. You know what? I didn't really have anything planned, but I did. Speaking of movies, and this is kind of on a different vein. I saw Almost Famous the other day, and I love that.
I've never
movie.
seen that movie.
You know what? Cameron Crowe directed this movie. He also did Elizabethtown. He did Jerry Maguire. He did a movie called Singles. What I love about him is that he really has a great way of like making you fall in love with music whenever you watch this movie. And this movie is just a love letter to music. It's about this 15-year-old kid who weasels his way into becoming a Rolling Stone writer, so he goes on tour with the band, and he's learning about fame, and this is all in the 70s, so he's learning about just fame and rock and roll and love and just what all of it means, and like, is this real? Is this fake? Are these people really your friends? Do they just want you to write well about them? And it's set to one of the most perfect movie soundtracks I've ever heard. It's maybe the only movie with Kate Hudson I like. Sorry, not sorry.
I don't know. Kate Hudson, she has some performances that are pretty good, but you're right. I can't think of.
I'm not a big chick flick Kate Hudson fan.
I'm not gonna I mean, to be fair,
and I really don't want chick flick to come off as offensive, but
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
but it's as far as her romantic comedies go, I don't find them very enjoyable.
Yeah, I'll agree. I'm not gonna honestly. I can't think of a single Kate Hudson movie to where I would like fight you on this.
Yeah.
I can't.
But it's just a really well done movie, and like Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it, Zoe Deschanel is in it.
That Philip Seymour Hoffman's in,
he
like,
is so good in it
he's
too.
Good
So
that is someone who's like good in almost anything.
Anything, yeah. Because even he has like a side role in that Robin Williams movie, Patrick.
Yes,
Patch Adams.
He does,
and he's great in that
kills
too.
That role. He kills that role so well. Him and Doubt, honestly,
yes,
that used to be one of my favorite performances.
Yeah, he is. You know what?
Doubt is one of those movies where it's like him, Amy Adams, Meryl Streep, Viola Davis.
Yeah.
That movie.
Guys, all right. So my homework for this week is Almost Famous and pretty much Philip Seymour Hoffman's filmography.
Yeah,
just take a gander. Whatever looks interesting, dive in. You can't go wrong.
Honestly, you can't go wrong with a Philip Seymour Hoffman.
No, not at all. Rest in peace.
Yeah, and that was a sad moment for me.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, so thank you for listening to Bruh Meets World. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher. Make sure you leave us some ratings. Interact with us on Instagram. You guys have been really good with that. And or Twitter, Facebook. All of it at Bruh Meets World. Or email us at bruhmeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at ExtraSiege. That's XTRACEEJ.
You can find me on Instagram at A Braver Me, which I should say is at .braver.me.
Yeah.
Just in case you
I always spell it out because of the fact that Extra Siege can be spelled very differently, and you've never clarified.
Yeah, I never have. So, a.braver.me. You can find me on Instagram. Or you can just find me in Los Angeles because I live here now. So just say what up.
Welcome to the city of Angels. Okay, thank you guys so much for listening. Remember to dream, try, and
do damn good, guys.
Do damn good.
Damn good.
All right, later, bros.
Later, bruh.